These are Michael Dickman, Sonia Sanchez, and Leon Lee. I've been interested in the dailiness of tragedy and loss as it exists in these poets' work. More so, I've been interested in how they make up for said loss through language, myth, and magic. Dickman writes about growing up surrounded by heroin and suicide. He writes in plain speech, in imagistic morsels, almost like short films filled with burning chandeliers and crumbling homes. Death and loss is essentially his norm. It's his childhood. It's what he knows, and he tells us. I'm going to read a little bit of his work. This is a poem called Scary Parents. I didn't shoot heroin in the 8th grade because I was afraid of needles, and I still am. My friends couldn't not do it. Black tar, a leather belt, and sunlight. Scary parents. They filled holes all afternoon while we went to the movies. The shit-faced gods swam upstream inside them and threw wild parties and stayed up all night, under their tongues, between their toes, their stomachs, all over their arms, wings, did not descend to wrap them up like babies as promised. Still, there is a lot to pray to on earth. So there's that. Leon Lee and Sonia Sanchez take this loss to another level. They speak about the loss of culture, of generation, of language and sexuality in order to belong in a place that doesn't want them, essentially. Lee's voice is one of the stranded, of an alien. He addresses family, the clumsy mouth, a cultural history that is forced into the melting pot. He writes really poignantly about how much one has to relinquish in order to assimilate, in order to be obedient, and really in order to survive in this country. I think you guys are familiar with Persimmons, one of his really great, awesome works, but I kind of hacked and slashed it just so I could read you guys my favorite parts. So here we go, Persimmons, partially. In 6th grade, Mrs. Walker slapped the back of my head and made me stand in the corner for not knowing the difference between persimmon and precision, how to choose. Donna undresses, her stomach is white. In the yard, doughy and shivering, with crickets we lay naked, face up, face down. I teach her Chinese, crickets, chew, chew. Do, I've forgotten. Naked, I've forgotten. Me, woe, you and me. Other words that got me into trouble were fight and fright, wren and yarn. Fight was what I did when I was frightened. Fright was what I felt when I was fighting. Wrens are small plain birds. Yarn is what one knits with. Wrens are as soft as yarn. My mother made birds out of yarn. I love to watch her tie the stuff, a bird, a rabbit, a wee man. Mrs. Walker brought a persimmon to class and cut it up so everyone could taste a Chinese apple. Knowing it wasn't ripe or sweet, I didn't eat, but watched the other faces. My mother says every persimmon has a sun inside. Something golden, glowing warms my face. Some things never leave a person. Scent of the hair of the one you love, the texture of persimmons in your palm, the right weight. I love that poem. You guys should read it if you haven't in your entirety. Sanchez takes this one step further. She writes about, not only does she write about her cultural tragedy, which is life in the Bronx in the 70s and the 80s, but she goes on to discuss the loss of being a woman, the beauty and pain of the body given to and taken by others, taken by drugs, taken by love. She writes of its remnants, the shards that one must salvage in order to love the broken. I wanted to read a longer excerpt again, but I've been reading you the whole book. So I'll read a poem called To All Brothers from All Sisters. To all brothers from all sisters, each night without you, and I give birth to myself. Who am I to be touched at random? To be alone so long, to see you move in this varicose country, like silhouettes passing an apprenticeship from slave to slavery to pimp to hustler to murderer to negro to niggerdom to militant to revolutionary to blackness to faggot, with the same shadings of disrespect covering your voice. And the night, playing a maiden tune, singes my eyes. Who am I to have loved you in rooms lit by a single wall? Who am I to have loved at all as the years come like water and the madness of my blood drains rivers? So Sanchez carries the weight in elegy, in history, in poetry, and in kind of in myth. She paints with kind of a surprising gentleness, and this is not to say without anger, but a surprising gentleness, a very violent world, a body and spirit destroyed by drugs and broken sex and cyclical oppression. So What I also love about all three of these poets is that they offer redemption. Their work is full of beautiful language moments that offer magic and therefore hope. They survive by returning to history and memory, and always with a kind of love. They remind us that despite loss, the sometimes terrible beauty of simply being sustains us. Despite what is taken away, they find new language to honor who they are, what they are made of, what is good, what is bad, and what has been taken. With observant poeticism, the balance of magic and plain speech, we're presented with a no longer inherent, but certainly a new-ish developing identity. One of hope, one of survival, and one that fills the spaces where it has otherwise been stripped bare. So those are my influences. I hope I didn't go through that too quickly. And I'm going to read a little bit of a piece that I wrote called Mattress Man. And I brought a bottle of water with me, and I didn't grab it. Can I grab that? Can I grab that? Is that okay? Is that allowed? Okay. So, this is my piece. It's called Mattress Man. 1. Mom had only been in town a few months when her sister Auntie traded her for 3 midline queen-sized mattresses. Auntie never let anyone inside. Auntie never came to visit. But when Auntie called, Mom took the train up from New Jersey, where her room smelled like salt and old water. Train to Lower Manhattan, red train up to 125th. The smell of mold on floor 1, fish on 3, garlic on 6, dog piss and newspaper on 7, and Auntie with her 3 heads on 8. Mom brought a red handbag from the factory where she stuffed purses with brown paper. She stuffed it that morning and paid full price for her sister. Auntie eyed the purse like a bad mark and put it in the closet. There wasn't room in Auntie's apartment for 1 queen mattress, let alone 3, but they made Mom feel special despite the cost. Their tops hunched against the low ceiling, 3 cramped giants, lazy sentry. Auntie had 4 kids, dirty boys who would grow up Ivy League. They threw themselves from one bounce to the next. Each mattress was covered in plastic. Auntie screamed at them to stop. Maybe, Auntie said, maybe Mom could have one. 2. Mattress Man wasn't Chinese, but he liked the food. He and Auntie played tug-of-war over the check, rising out of their seats, their hands grabbing at the bill, forming an Eiffel Tower in the middle of the China garden. Auntie always lost. Mom didn't like the gray food, but ate. Mattress Man had a car. He insisted on driving Mom home even though it was out of his way. The car rides were long, but they were a relief from the loud flood of soaked bodies jammed on the train. Foreign breath and sweat, the rushed transfer, the homeless men who camped across multiple seats, cursing and daring anyone to come close. Rides with Mattress Man were a kind of luxury. After days of small talk and long pauses, Mom told Mattress Man stories to pass the time. They were true, made up, or something in between, and Mom smoothed them together to hide the seams. Mattress Man couldn't tell the difference between fact and fiction, and he didn't try. Sometimes Mom couldn't either, her own myth surpassing her body, her mouth filling the car. Like the rest of the city, Mattress Man had an old life in an older country. He had a wife, 2 daughters, and a monthly pile of letters he threw away unopened. He left that part out. He was here to have sons like Auntie's. Mom felt bad for him, his flat, brown-toed face, pockmarked from years of bad skin, so the stories continued. Auntie kept the mattresses and made sure Mom got into his car after every visit. Mom memorized each turn, 11, the number of blocks to the Holland Tunnel, 46, the minutes they sat in the tunnel, 30, how long she could hold her breath. She memorized the roads by bumps and turns and seconds, how not to get turned around. And every day, Auntie would ask, when? 3. By winter, even Auntie was tired of the gray food. One night, her kids screamed so loud for pizza, the group filed out of the China garden in shame. Mom had never had pizza. Auntie had no words. Mattress Man hated eating with his hands. There was no Eiffel Tower. Mattress Man lent Auntie the money and refused to slice. After pizza, Auntie shoved Mom into the car and bowed deeply, repeatedly, until she grew small and disappeared from sight. Mom closed her eyes. This time there were too many turns, more bumps than wide, smooth avenues. No swerve to miss the potholes on Broadway. No Broadway at all. Where are we going? They pulled into a motel off the West Side Highway where Mom could see past the gas station into New Jersey. her room, the old water smell. Mattress man stopped the car and opened the door. He wanted to tell her a story. 4, I need water. 4. When Mom was 27, her sister gave her away to a mattress salesman. Mom had never been inside a motel room. The carpet was once beige, now dappled with wary tread and stains. The curtains were closed. The light from the parking lot slid orange across the floor and up along the walls. Outside, motel patrons murmured past, the occasional peal of laughter, people tending to their own secret lives. Mattress man sat himself in the room's one chair, poked and burnt with cigarettes, and lit his own. Mom stood against the closed door, with its knob and locks bulging back. No, Mom would not bear him sons. But Auntie had promised 3 brand new mattresses. Mom, Auntie had sworn, was shaped to bear him sons. Mattress man reasoned, then begged, and finally smashed the room's only lamp against the wall. Plunged in darkness, Mom wondered who else had dreamt in that orange room, whether they'd find a way to move on. Up until the lights went out, she had felt sorry for him. 5. When Mom was 17, Grandmother tied Auntie to a kitchen post and broke the knuckles on her right hand. When she was 18, Mom ran away with a boy who promised her California. When they brought her back, they locked her in the room she shared with Auntie. No windows, shit where you eat for months. In the next room, Grandmother slept, clutching Auntie's hair. When they came to trade the shit bucket for food, Mom laid there, eyes to the ceiling, dead as a fish. Mom didn't want any water. Auntie spit in Mom's food. Once a week, they scrubbed her skin raw, naked in the courtyard. Grandmother cut Mom's hair with sewing scissors and pulled it into 2 tight braids that made her scalp itch. They kept her made up and dressed in her best clothes, the ones that got her into trouble in the first place. When Auntie and Grandmother were done, they closed the door for another week. 6 months later, Mom found the pills. She ate them. They put her in a brand new dress and sent her away. They cleaned the room and lent it out to travelers. 6. The hospital was one for sinners, not the sick. Mom spent her time wandering the halls with the women who screamed, the dulled eyes and noise, no words she could make out. She grew frustrated of trying, so did they, then they parted ways. When she came across the women whose eyes were sharp and clear, she turned away. She avoided the nurses and pulled her hair. Occasionally, she'd spy one of them wearing a familiar blouse, a favorite hairpin. They put her to work. She served pale food on Fridays. On Sundays, she boiled and scraped the dirty week-long sheets. Punching and pulling at the huge swaths of cloth, she gulped down church songs with the other working ladies, mouthing the words, consuming air. So much shit and piss, so much blood. Her hands wiped orange, then a deep burgundy brown. She dared not touch her face. She let the salt water sting her eyes into the boiling vats. 7. They let her out when her father died. They put her in the van without a shower. She left wearing the thin pajamas they gave her once a week. During transport, she noticed her reflection and glanced away. She looked at her 2 hands, rubbed raw. It was Sunday. She smelled like sweat and box soap. Her father wore light blue pajamas like hers. Unlike hers, his name was embroidered over his chest. She wondered if they'd misplaced his clothing too. She crawled into his bed and laid in the crook of his arm. His room was warm and his blanket was new. His bed didn't smell like rubber. Grandmother didn't cry. Grandmother told her she smelled like shit and pulled her away from her father's body. Grandmother yanked the plastic tags off Mom's wrist and went off to demand the return of Mom's best dress. Mom crawled into the hospital bed and sobbed until they could take both bodies away. 8. Water. 8. The cops showed up sometime after 2:30. Mattress man was gone. Mom's clothes disappeared with him. They found her under the motel bed, naked, clawing at her body, banging her head, the bruise, the blood, and the animal noises. Management couldn't find her money. They couldn't drag her outside. No one could make meetings, so they let her go. She stumbled alone up the West Side Highway, the Hudson River in her left hand. 9. Mold on floor 1, fish on 3, garlic on 6, wet newspaper on 7, and Auntie her 3 heads on 8. Mom knocked on the door. She looked like the lost and found. She wanted some water. Auntie threw the red purse down the stairs, said he was coming for the mattresses, she was a liar, and slammed the door. Mom knocked again. 10. She would set them all on fire. She would shut the dirty kids in the bathroom. She would push each mattress down the stairs, fling them out the window, plastic aflame. Let them call the police, let the neighbors stare. Let Auntie shriek, her meaningless cursing and protest. Mom would run away. Mom would cut her own hair so no one could pull. Mom would go to California, where she would not need her winter coat, where she would not need her father, where there would be no drowning, no need to hold her breath. She would find a job gluing fake flowers to hats in a factory downtown. On Sundays, she and the other ladies would sell the less popular arrangements at half price at the swap meet. She'd buy her first home, her first car. She'd forever keep her hair cropped. And one day, she'd have 2 beautiful daughters. Finally, California, promised a lifetime ago. A place with no silent maps to memorize, no bumps and turns to count, where all the streets were broad and smooth and endlessly moving west of the Hudson. Mom would have no need for stories here. There'd be nothing to explain. There'd be no need to get into anyone's car. When the time came, Mom would teach her children how to disappear completely. She would teach them necessity. When the time came, she would teach them to forget and run. That's it.